Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Micah, and I thought today what I would do is do a book haul with everyone about all the books that I got while I was in the UK. So recently I went to the UK for a week. I went to London and then Inverness in Scotland. I've been planning this trip for a long time. Initially, when me and my husband got married, that's where I wanted to go for our honeymoon, but fun fact, my husband actually hates to travel. I barely was able to get him to go to the beach for the first time 2 years ago, so an international trip kind of seemed impossible. Then I decided that I wanted to go to London with my sister-in-law and my niece. And we were going to go, I think, maybe 2021, but the COVID restrictions in the UK were a lot more strict than the US, and we would have had a quarantine once we got there for a long time, so we decided to take another trip. And then later in 2021, unfortunately, my mom passed away, and I decided I wanted to take the trip to the UK because my mom was she was such a person who loved to explore and travel, and she just did things kind of spontaneously. So I thought that would be a cool trip to honor her with. So I went with two of my friends and my sister-in-law and my niece. And of course, while I was there, I had to get plenty of books. And I'm going to go through the books, where I got them, and just kind of talk about my experience there. So, our very first book stop is actually in the town of Bath. So, the very first day we were in the UK, we went on an all day tour where it took us to Stonehenge and then the city of Bath, where we saw the Roman Baths Museum, and we were able to just walk around. And probably my favorite part of the day was just perusing the shops. And there's a really beautiful cathedral in Bath, and there was someone playing music in the square. It was just awesome. It's just what I imagined when going to Europe. So the first book I got, this is called Diary of a Tuscan Bookshop, and this is by Alba Donati. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. So this is something that my friend actually pointed out to me, and he was like, "Hey, this looks good." So I was like, "Okay," and I bought it. So the description of this, it is about Alba, who used to live a hectic life. She used to work as a book publicist in Florence, something that made her happy, but also left her feeling like she's constantly on the run. So one day she decides to go back to the small village in the Tuscan hills where she was born and open a tiny bookshop. Hi everyone, this is my cat Pippin. Hey baby, let's put you on the floor. You and I can cuddle. So one day she decides to go back to the small village in the Tuscan hills where she was born and open a tiny bookshop. And it seems like her bookshop is doomed from day one. But after surviving a fire and all the restrictions imposed by the pandemic, her little bookshop really becomes a refuge for an ever-growing community of readers. So this is like the perfect travel book, and I am really excited to get into this one. So our next book stop is the British Museum. So I know the British Museum is very controversial because it's full of things from all over the world that were stolen from these countries during Britain's very long colonialization period. And I wholeheartedly believe that these things should be returned to the countries from which they were taken. But it has always been my dream to see the British Museum, so I figured that while I was in London, I would go see it. And of course, I spent way too much money in the gift shop, not just on books, but on other things. But one thing I got and that I'm currently reading is A Curious Guide to London by Simon Leyland. And what this does, what I really like about this book so far is let me open it up. It is just very interesting facts, just kind of weird stories, but it has let me see that you can see it. So it kind of gives the different sections in London, and it has little maps, and it has like what's in that section. So like for example, me and my group, we stayed in Piccadilly Circus. So there's a section on Piccadilly. So if you are familiar with a particular section, you can read that first. But it's really short. It's a really quick little read. I'm not done with it obviously, but it's kind of like fun, bizarre facts, and it's inspired by the author. He met someone who who worked at like a little newspaper stand for like 40 years, and all the things that the stories he had heard. And the author was like, well, this guy's just, he's making it up. But later he found out that almost all the stories that the guy told him were true. So I got that at the British Museum. I also got Egyptian mythology. So one reason I really wanted to go to the British Museum was because, fun fact, I actually have a degree in history, and one of the first things I was ever interested in as a child in history was ancient Egypt. And, how I would work with my historical love is I'd focus on one thing and really get into it, then I'd focus on another thing, so I would kind of switch. So it's been a long time since I've really got into Egyptian history, but seeing all the cool things at the British Museum, like part of the Sphinx and the sarcophagus and Rosetta Stone, all those things kind of made me want to get back into that. So I got Egyptian mythology. This is by Garry J. Shaw, and it says it's a traveler's guide from Aswan to Alexandria. So I just want to, relearn a lot of the stuff I've forgotten and kind of get into it, because really when I think of mythology, I do think of ancient Greece. I recently read Mythos by Stephen Fry, and that was a great book, but I'd like to get back into Egyptian mythology. And then this isn't really necessarily a regular book, but this is the British Museum's guide. So if you look here, it has several different things, and it has little descriptions, and it is, I think this was just like £6, and they had it in so many different languages. Um, but it has like the time period, and it's divided by part of the world. So this is really good because there was no way we were going to actually see everything there in one day. And fun fact, um, while we were in the different places on our trip, fire alarms just went off. Like when we were in Stonehenge gift shop, the fire alarm went off and we had to evacuate. When we were in the British Museum, we had been there for a couple hours and we're like, should we keep on going? Are we done for the day? And then the fire alarm went off and we evacuated. Then we went to Scotland. They were testing the fire alarms in our hotel. So we were just cursed with that. But this is a really cool little thing to, in a few years when maybe I don't remember everything as well, I can look at this. And also, it's really good for the things that you miss. Because, unless you're spending like 10 hours in there, you're going to miss some things. So this was a really good souvenir and a little purchase that I plan on revisiting. All right, next stop, we're moving from London to Inverness in Scotland. So in Scotland, I actually got matching tattoos with my sister-in-law. It's kind of a hard angle to see, but this is actually Nessie and then the castle that's behind it in Loch Ness. And then after we got our tattoos, we were just wandering around Inverness, and we found this little shop. And we went in there because my sister-in-law was looking for things for her sons, like little toys. But actually, they had this great deal where there were some books that were only £5, and then they had a deal of 3 books for £6. So both me and my sister-in-law love books, and we went wild in that place. So I'm going to show you the books that I got. And a lot of people don't like stickers on their books, which is fair. I usually don't either. But this is the 3 for £6 deal, and I'm from America. We have dollars. We don't have the pounds. So having that little symbol there is it's like a reminder of our trip. So this is the first thing I got. This is called Celebrations at the Chateau by Joe Thomas. And this just looks like a fun read. For a while I was just reading thrillers, and I'm like, okay, I need some romance, I need some fantasy to kind of lighten up the mood. So this story is about a group of sisters. Their grandfather dies, and they inherit a French chateau. So they travel to Normandy, and they realize that it's pretty run down, needs major work, and there's a huge tax bill, and they don't really have the money to renovate. But they're having some issues with it, so they decide to actually fix it up. And while they're there, they run into the local mayor who's hostile, and they kind of have to adjust to saying goodbye to their grandfather and then opening up this new business. So I am a sucker for little travel books like this. Like, obviously, I will never inherit a French chateau, but I can live vicariously through this character. So this is the first book I got at that shop, and I hate that I can't remember the name because I got a lot of stuff there. The next one, for the 3 for £6 deal was this one. This is How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. I have read The Midnight Library before and I absolutely loved it. And this is the British cover of this book. And once I came home, I was like, man, I really love the British cover, so probably gonna have to hit up Blackwell's from now on to get some British cover books. But this is about our main character. His name is Tom Hazard. It says he might look like an ordinary 41-year-old, but he's actually been alive for centuries. So he's immortal. And he changes his identity every few years, but it says the only thing he must not do is fall in love. But what if the one thing he can't have is the only thing that might save him? And it sounds like from the description that it will go into the historical events that he lived through, which is when I'm reading something about an immortal, I'm like, why are you not talking about all the historical things? Like, you missed a huge opportunity for a history nerd like me. So I'm really excited about this one, and I really love The Midnight Library from this author, so I'm hoping this one will be just as good, if not better, as the other book I've read by them. And this is the last one in the 3 for £6 deal. This is The Death of Mrs. Westaway, and this is by Ruth Ware. And I heard of this book, I think it was on, there's a channel I love, Chapter and Converse. But this says, when Harriet Westaway receives an unexpected letter telling her she's inherited a substantial bequest from her Cornish grandmother, seems like the answer to her prayers, but there's just one problem. Hal's real grandparents died more than 20 years ago. So we got some mistaken identity. Maybe we got some and then there were none going. Hal desperately needs the cash and makes a choice that will change her life forever. She knows that her skills as a seaside fortune teller, that sounds like a fun job, could help her con her way into getting the money. But once Hal embarks on her deception, there is no going back. She must keep going or risk losing everything, even her life. So this kind of sounds like a combination of maybe and then there were none in the Westing game. But I love the cover, and I got this book recommendation, I think, from Chapter and Converse, so I'm excited to read it. And then the next book is from that same shop, but this is the one that was for $5, and I wanted to read this for a while, and I never see it in my local Barnes & Noble. So this is called My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. So basically it's about this woman and her brother. They're on a vacation in Cape Cod, so New England. I've never been to Cape Cod, but Maine is actually one of my favorite places in the world. If my husband would let us, I would move there. So her and her brother go on vacation and they find a body in their rental home. So they call the police and everything. And it says now a rude, crude bounty hunter has arrived in the back of his motorcycle to catch the killer. And, he's really annoyed because the girl character, she is a true crime aficionado. And she's like, I can help. And he's like, you just listen to podcasts. You know what you're talking about. But, there's some tension, but obviously there's going to be some romance. So I'm excited for this one because for some reason I can never find it in my Barnes & Noble. And I go to Scotland and it magically appears. So it's awesome. And then the last place, book-wise, that I went to, it's this old bookstore in Inverness, and it's called Leakey's Bookshop. And my sister-in-law and my niece, they went to another antique bookstore, when I was in the British Museum, and they found all these great books. And I was really like, if I could get an antique book of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, I love that story. I love Charles Dickens. Fun fact, I watch the Muppets Christmas Carol just for fun all the time. I actually talk about that in another video. But I went to Leakey's Bookshop in Inverness, and they didn't have it, but they had something similar. It's Christmas Stories by Charles Dickens, and there's 2 volumes of it. And let me see, I think there's some. Here we go. There are a few illustrations in here. But they're basically short stories that I've never heard of. I didn't really know he had a Christmas short story before. I really just, that's that old book smell. But really, the cover is beautiful. And it is 2 volumes. I probably wouldn't have bought 2 volumes, but the way this store was is if there was a volume, if there was a set, you had to buy all the set. Because I was wanting to buy this one thing. I don't know if it was the history of Scotland or geography of Scotland, but I wanted to buy it, but there were like 8 volumes for like 110 pounds. So I decided, I was like, okay, I'll find some Charles Dickens. I found these Christmas stories. It's not a Christmas Carol, but really, it's a beautiful set of books here. And I'll just kind of, if we look here, some of the stories, we have one called Mugby Junction, Dr. Marigold, Mrs. Luriper's Lodgings. This is the second volume. I think the first volume has a lot more stories, so I guess they're shorter. Let's see. Yeah, this one has a lot more. A Christmas Tree, the Schoolboy's Story, The Seven Poor Travelers, The Haunted House. Ooh, Haunted Christmas, like that. Somebody's Luggage, The Perils of Certain English Prisoners. So, I'm excited about this find. It was unexpected. I was really wanting a Christmas Carol, but it just didn't happen. I'll get a newer version of that, probably around Christmas time. But I really my trip to the UK was really amazing, and I found a lot of great books. So I'll put all these books in the description. I'll put a link to the bookstore in Bath. I can't remember the name of it. I'm gonna have to look that up. And also Leakey's Bookshop in Inverness. But I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and thank you so much. Everyone have a great day.